Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Let me tell you, today's testimony really matters in the Karen Read case because it cuts right to the heart of the timeline, the Commonwealth's timeline and Karen Read's timeline. Lucky Lockan, a Canton snowplow operator, passed right by the very spot where John O'Keefe's body was found at about 6 a.m. on January 29th. Even though his body had been passed by multiple times by this snowplow driver, at no point did he see a body on the lawn of 34 Fairview. I should say, not that he definitely passed by it, but that he passed by the area where the body should have been under the Commonwealth's theory. And he says he saw nothing. No body, even though he had a very clear, very well-lit view of the Albert's yard there at 34 Fairview. He didn't see anything that suggested a body was lying there. Within just a matter of hours, depending on exactly what the time was, John O'Keefe's body found lying in that same yard, covered in snow, near the flagpole of 34 Fairview. So what happened? And that's what today's witness tried to explain. And it was not just about what he saw. It was about what he heard. It was about what he remembered. And it was about who he was talking to. Because this is also the same witness who admitted he had been contacted by a blogger. And that was a part of the Commonwealth's cross-examination of him. This was a blogger with a huge social media presence who called him, who published things about him. And now, after he has testified in Karen Read's favor, he admitted he had been celebrated by people online. So under cross, he was asked, did that blogger pressure you? Did he tell you what to say? Was there a price to pay if you didn't testify the right way? Now, Lucky Lockan says, no, he was just doing his job. But the prosecution is suggesting something else, that this is not just a snowplow driver. This is someone who changed his timeline or got confused about his timeline, changed the story or got confused about the story, and that maybe he was actually just influenced by the crowd as opposed to telling the truth. So today we are going to break down what he really said. We're going to look at the highlights. We're going to look at some clips, and we're going to talk about whether this helped Karen Read, whether the cross-examination undermined Lucky Lockan's testimony. We're going to be talking about all of that. So as we dive in, I want to say a special shout out to the first 5 in tonight's chat: Oklahoma Gigi, Angel LaFawn, Shiro Sheena, Michael Lalonde, and SoCo Judy. Welcome to all 5 of you and everybody tonight. Well, it was quite the day at trial. It was there were a lot of arguments over it. There was a long period where they took a sidebar and argued over everything. So you will be fascinated, I think, if you haven't seen it already, and you'll enjoy talking about it no matter what. So let me ask you, would you mind hitting the like button? That'll help more people come in and join us for the live stream. And then if you are not subscribed, we would love to have you as a subscriber. We're getting awfully close to 200,000. You might be the very person who put us over. We won't be able to tell that for sure, but we'll just assume it's you. All right. So Vicki, I want to say thank you for gifting 10 Lawyer Lee memberships. I really do appreciate that. Next week is our members only live stream. So perfect timing. Thank you, Vicki. If you want to receive one of those, YouTube gives those out. You have to turn on the ability to get those. And our mods, Marlon and Mama Pinks, will put instructions in the chat for how exactly you go about doing that. And TN Gal 1, thank you very much for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Okay, so let's dive in. Now, the Brian Higgins, well, let me go ahead and start. I want to start with the snowplow driver because I think that was so important. There were 2 witnesses today. We're going to talk about both, but the first one was by far more important, I think, to the day. So Lucky Lockan said his snowplow has very bright lights on it, that he's constantly vigilant, looking around, hoping, nobody's pulling out of a driveway. There are no pets running around. He's always on the lookout. So as he was plowing as the blizzard was moving in that morning of January 29th, he was lit, headed right past 34 Fairview repeatedly, and he was looking closely. So if anybody, the defense says, would have seen a body, it would have been Lucky Lockan. He'd be the very one. And yet, here you go.
The ground on the Alberts lawn at that point in the area of the flagpole?
Nothing.
Did you see a 6'1", 216-pound man lying on that lawn?
No.
Now, after plowing Fairview with the Alberts residence to your right, what do you do?
I go to the very end, take a left onto Chapman Street, back down Chapman Street, and then take a left back onto Fairview.
How long does it take you to get from 34 Fairview the first time to get to Chapman Street?
Maybe 5-10 minutes.
And then how long does it take you to get from Chapman Street back down so that you're now passing 34 Fairview again?
Again, about 5-10 minutes.
And when you're coming back down, what side of the road is 34 Fairview?
On my left.
When you pass 34 Fairview at that time, are there any obstructions preventing you from seeing the front lawn?
None.
And how much of that front lawn are you able to see on 34 Fairview when you're coming back down from Chapman?
I can see everything. I can see right up to the front door.
What did you see on the front lawn of 34 Fairview on January 29th of 2022 when you're making the second pass by 34 Fairview in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
Describe.
So that's very clear testimony that he did not see a body. He did not see John O'Keefe lying in the snow. According to the Commonwealth's theory, John O'Keefe was there. He was lying on the ground next to the flagpole ever since Karen Reed had left several hours earlier at about 12:30. She had dropped him off for a party at 34 Fairview. She says he got out of the car, walked toward the door, walked in the door, she has said, although she hasn't testified at trial. And the Commonwealth says what happened is she started away, she backed backwards at a high rate of speed into John O'Keefe, knocked him into the yard, and he hit his head, and a combination of that and hypothermia killed him as he lay there in the snow, in the coming snow all night long. So the defense says this man right here, the snowplow driver, passed by this spot not just once or twice, but multiple times through the night, and he never saw the body that should have been there. If, in fact, John O'Keefe had been knocked into the snow by Karen Reed at 12:30, then the body should have been there. And so that was why they went to such pains to say, yes, where it was really brightly lit and you had lights on your snowplow and the area was brightly lit and you were looking, you had a reason to look because you didn't want to hit anybody as you operated your snowplow. So that's why those questions were there. And now, the timing, though, is going to be in a lot of dispute by the end of his testimony. That's exactly where the Commonwealth went with its cross-examination, was where exactly was this witness? So according to what this witness said on direct with the defense in the initial questioning, he got back to 34 Fairview after having been there more than once, and it's now 3:30 in the morning, and it's snowing fairly hard. There are already 2 to 3 inches of snow on the ground. But this time, there is something to notice. It's not a body, but there is something to notice. It's a car, a Ford Edge parked near the flagpole in front of 34 Fairview. And he's going to say that's unusual. That's weird. Now, we know from other witnesses who have testified that the defense makes a point that the Alberts owned not one but 2 Ford Edges. And so the point that the defense wants to make is maybe this was a car driven by the Alberts, and maybe the reason that car was parked there had something to do with why John O'Keefe was found right in that area the next morning.
To the jury what you see in the road at that point.
As I make my right onto Fairview, I notice that there's a vehicle on the right-hand side, roughly in the area of the flagpole, in front of 34 Fairview.
Okay. And did you make note of what type of vehicle that was?
Yes.
What type of vehicle was that?
A Ford Edge.
What direction was that vehicle parked when you saw it?
It was parked nose going up Fairview.
Toward Chapman?
Yes.
So you're coming up from behind it?
Correct.
You see the rear of that vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, so remember what he said about that direction. He's seen the rear of the vehicle because the Commonwealth has an explanation for what that vehicle might have been, but the vehicle is turned a different direction. So that is going to be a little bit more difficult for them, at least I think. Lucky was clear that he remembered this because it was kind of a pain. He had to navigate around this vehicle, which was not supposed to be parked on the street. Everybody was supposed to park in the driveways to make room so that the snowplow could go down the street. And in fact, what's supposed to happen when somebody parks on the street when a snowstorm is coming and the snowplow is going through is he's supposed to report that. And his boss then will contact the homeowner. And if they don't answer, then the vehicle gets towed. He said he didn't do that because he knew the Alberts, had known the Alberts for many years. So he just maneuvered around the vehicle. He did another pass, a 3-point turn, and came back through 5 to 10 minutes later.
Now, you are now approaching 34 Fairview and it's on your right or your left this time.
Again, it's on my left.
What, if anything, did you see in the road at that point?
Again, I saw the Ford Edge in the road.
Now it's on your left side?
Yes.
Did it appear to be in the identical position as when you came up the street toward Chapman?
Yes.
How much of the area of the flagpole were you able to see this time as you're coming back down from Chapman?
It was obstructed, so I wasn't able to see as much as the first time, but I was still able to see the flagpole.
What did you see on the ground in the area of the flagpole at now 3:35, 3:40 in the morning?
I saw nothing.
You're saying
Now, I had to ask, how is that helpful to the defense? I wondered why he went ahead and clarified that he still saw nothing on the ground in the area of the flag. It seems like the defense would want there to be a body there by now. And that would fit in with their timeline, because if they're going to suggest that somebody in the Ford Edge connected with the Alberts was positioning John O'Keefe's body down there in that area, then you would think they would want the body to be there. But they went ahead and asked the questions. I wasn't entirely sure about why they pushed for that. We'll get to some questions I couldn't understand why Hank Brennan asked, and we'll ask the same question. So he got back, because he's plowing all night, Lucky Lockan is, but he got back to 34 Fairview about 6:15 in the morning, he said, and it was daylight. Now, I want to point out, I looked up when was sunrise on January 29, 2022 in Boston, Massachusetts. And what it said was that sunrise was at 7:01 a.m. This was not cross-examination by Brennan, so the jury doesn't know that, but I did look it up, so it does seem like there's some contradiction there. And that would fit in with the story we're going to hear from Hank Brennan's side. There was a very thorough cross-examination by Hank Brennan. There were lots of hints that Lucky was very unluckily threatened by an blogger who supports the defense. Brennan didn't put in a lot of evidence about this. He just asked questions. So Lucky denied being threatened. Now, let me say thank you to a few people. Tina, we are so glad to have you as a brand new member. That's awesome. Michael, yes, Lady in Red. That was something my husband and I had as a song. We loved that. All right. Neuropsych Xena saying, yes, please, if you are a current subscriber, make sure you're still subscribed. We are getting so close to 200,000. And no matter what, we're going to assume each and every one of you is the person who put us over. So thank you to you in the future. All right. Megan has a really good point here. She says she grew up in a small town, and the courage it took for Lucky to testify, despite being a lifelong Canton resident, speaks a lot about his integrity. And I would just have to say, it's not just a matter of testifying. This entire experience has to have been overwhelming for him. He was in the center of just turmoil. So we're going to hear a little bit about that. Let's go ahead and hear, but that's a really good point.
As you sit here today, you have no awareness in the history of this case that you were being threatened by an online blogger.
I was not threatened by an online blogger.
Was the online blogger threatening or saying that he would expose you and tell personal things about you if you weren't helpful?
He was not threatening.
let's remove the word threatening. Was the person communicating and making clear to you that if you didn't testify in a certain way, there would be some consequence to you?
Objection. Can we get a time frame, please?
Anytime from when you first spoke to the private investigator until today, were there communications made to you by an online blogger that there would be consequence to you if you didn't testify in a way that was acceptable to them?
No,
You listened, of course, didn't you, to podcasts that were about you?
I did not.
People told you about them.
Yes, I did.
When friends told you about them, you knew who that person was that was making those claims, correct?
Correct.
You were well aware of the person had a very strong and large social media presence.
I didn't know how large or what his presence were, but yes, I knew he had a blog.
Well, you know now because you follow that blogger now, don't you?
I do follow him, yes.
Do you pay for a subscription?
I do not.
Did you get one for free?
I did not.
And in following that blogger, you know full well the power that person has to get attention from the community to harass, correct?
Yes,
You received a call from that blogger, didn't you?
I did.
And during that call, did you know the person was recording you?
I did not.
You later learned that the person recorded you.
I did not.
Do you know that your conversations were spread throughout the community online?
I was.
Sir, some of those communications or inquiries were claims that you would be exposed for personal matters if you didn't testify a certain way, weren't they?
No.
Inevitably, you've met this person, haven't you?
I've seen him. I haven't met him.
So to Megan's point about the courage it took for Lucky Lockan to get up and testify to this, the Commonwealth is saying, in fact, it took a lot of courage because you were being threatened. You were being threatened earlier. And so the Commonwealth is suggesting that because he was literally being intimidated by this blogger, that he changed his testimony. Now, the blogger that they are no doubt referring to is known as Turtle Boy, and he is currently being prosecuted for witness intimidation tactics. He says, this is just because, Turtle Boy, this is just because I support Karen Read. This is nothing but you coming after me because you don't like people exposing the fact that corruption is what framed Karen Read. So that's that dispute in a very brief, not precise nutshell. But but the blogger without name made it into this trial. And according to the Commonwealth, they believe Lucky Lockan's testimony was shaped by the fear he was put in because of pressure from the community. Here's a little bit more on that.
How many friends contacted you about what was being said before you testified, the pressure? How many people told you about that?
I couldn't tell you. All my friends were telling me.
So you were hearing a lot of noise or information from your friend group and community about what was being said about you. Haven't you ever been encouraged to do the right thing?
No.
Haven't you ever been celebrated after you've testified in a way favorable for one side or the other?
Yes.
When you were celebrated for testifying a certain way, did you find that to be encouraging?
I did find it to be encouraging, but I did not want it. I don't think I deserved it. All I was doing was my job and telling the truth.
Did you enjoy the attention that you got?
I did not.
Did you pose in photographs with people who support one side or the other?
I did.
And when you were in those photographs, are you saying that you didn't enjoy the attention that you were receiving?
I did not. Again, I was trying to be polite and trying to avoid any confrontation that may come from something if I said no.
It actually, as Brennan described it, it moves into the sort of, I was going to say pathos, but it's sad, really, that Brennan frames this as he just wanted to be left alone, and he was just hounded by this media circus that began to follow.
So you work hard, don't you?
I do.
You work many different jobs.
I do.
You try to be a good citizen.
I do.
You are not looking for attention.
I am not.
It was brought to you.
It was brought to me.
You wish you never had that attention, don't you?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that you simply want to live your life the way you've been living it without outside people attacking or pressuring or threatening you?
Yes.
I thought actually that was really good cross-examination by Brennan. And here's why. Because Brennan is having to go after this man, and it doesn't look like or seem like somebody who would stand up and lie. What would be his reason for that, right? Well, Brennan puts out a reason. He says, okay, you may think there's no reason. There is a reason. The reason is he's being threatened. And then Brennan puts on the good guy hat because normally the lawyer who's doing the cross-examination is the one who looks like the bad guy, right? The lawyer going mean, the person who is testifying, and gosh, here's just this snowplow driver, leave him alone. So Brennan is trying to turn the tables. We're going to do a poll at the end of this. I'm going to ask you what you think. But what Brennan is trying to do is turn the tables and say, look, we're the white hat, and the bad guys are the ones who pressured you to change your testimony or to create this testimony. That's what should be considered in this particular area. So a major thrust of the cross-examination by Brennan was about what a mess Lucky Lochran's times were. And honestly, most people would be really, really bad at giving exact times like this. I personally would be terrible, but he gave a different set of times in every interview and in the trial testimony from last time versus the trial testimony from this time. Now, he admits that there is a contradiction between what he's saying today and what he said at trial a year ago.
Were you aware that there was a difference between the different statements attributing your memory as to time?
The first trial, yes.
And let's stop there. And furthermore, Lucky Lochran also was interviewed by the FBI. Now, the jury isn't being told FBI. Technically, they're not even supposed to know there's a first trial, but you just heard another reference to it there. There must have been at least 50 in the trial so far, references to the first trial, the trial, earlier trial. So I think the jury has gotten that message. But I don't think very, very often anyway, that the FBI has been dropped in. Instead, it's the other law enforcement agency, the agency that's not the Canton police and not the Boston police and not Massachusetts State Police, the other agency. So normally they're trying not to mention, by ruling of the court, the FBI. However, Lucky Lochran was in fact interviewed by the FBI when the feds did an investigation. He told, apparently, according to Brennan's Cross, he told the FBI that he began working at 11:30 that night, somewhere between 11:30 and midnight, and that emergency vehicles were out in front of 34 Fairview at 3:30 a.m. But now he says, really, it was a lot later than that. And of course, it's important that he say it was a lot later than that, because 3:30 a.m. would be really too early, because Karen Reed didn't even go looking for him with Jim McCabe and Carrie Roberts until the late fives, and they didn't find the body till 6, and 911 wasn't called until after 6. So it would be way too early. His time frame is clearly off if in fact 3:30 a.m. is when the vehicles were there. So here's how this happened.
Then they asked you about when you began working that night.
Yes.
You told them 11:30 to midnight.
I never told him that.
And so as you sit here today, your memory is you did not tell those law enforcement agents that you began work at 11:30 to 12?
We had a 2:30 start time.
I understand, but I'm asking you,
I never told them. It was always 2:30 start time.
when you spoke to them, do you remember telling them the first time you were out near the area was midnight?
Nope. No.
And do you remember telling those two law enforcement personnel that you believe that there were emergency vehicles, ambulances, or police cars in front of Fairview at 3 to 3:30 a.m.?
I do not.
Are you saying that you did not say these things to them, or are you saying that that's not your memory?
That's not what I said.
And so you're saying that's wrong. You're denying
Correct.
you made those statements.
Correct.
At the time they say that you told them there was emergency vehicles there at 3 a.m., that is the same time that you told the PI that you saw the Ford Edge, around 3:30 to 4, correct?
About 3:30 is when I saw the Ford Edge.
Now, there was one additional way where his testimony at this trial was better for Karen Reed than last trial, and that's that he said at the last trial there were no street lights in the area. But this time around, he said, well, I drive in the area, and now I know, in fact, there is a street light right there, meaning there would be even more light where he would be able to see a body in the yard if there had been a body there. Cross was very much focused and centered. And I thought it was pretty powerful because of how confusing it was by the end around the times. Now, Brennan was suggesting, and I think hinting, that what Lucky Lockan saw that morning, that he had his times all wrong, that what had happened was he got confused. It was really about 6 a.m. when he saw that one car parked there in the front by the flagpole in front of 34 Fairview. And what he was seeing was Carrie Roberts' car, which supposedly looks a lot like a Ford Edge. Carrie Roberts was driving when Karen Reed, when Jim McCabe, they all three went to look for John O'Keefe, and they saw his body lying there in the snow. And Karen saw it when no one else had seen it. She went running for it. That's another argument that the prosecution makes. The Commonwealth says, well, the reason she knew it was because she knew she'd left him there the night before. She knew she'd hit him. So I think what Brennan is suggesting is that the timing was that at roughly about 6, he went by just as Carrie Roberts' car had arrived or shortly thereafter. And the women are all over there. He doesn't see them, but they're all on the other side of the car with the body of John O'Keefe. And when he drives back by, that all of the vehicles are there. All the emergency vehicles are there. His timing was off. This wasn't a Ford Edge in the middle of the night at 3:30 by the flagpole. This was Carrie Roberts right before 911 was called. So that was the point of him addressing all of these different times, and the confusion is to say you don't know the time and probably you just saw Carrie Roberts' car.
Remember telling the defense private investigator that you made your final pass at 6:30 a.m.?
I remember I told him it was about 3 hours going down Cedar Crest and was not able to go to the end of Fairview due to the first responders.
At trial last year, do you remember saying it was 5:30?
I did.
And today you had said about 6:15.
Yes.
So the last trial, he said he got onto Fairview at about 5:30 a.m. His times did change with every single interview. That's what Hank Brennan is trying to point out for the Commonwealth.
Trial testimony testimony from June 21st, 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And you were asked, do you recall what time it was that you wound up back on Fairview? You said, I don't honestly recall what specific time. Yes?
Yes.
And then you were asked, sure. Approximately, if it was 3:15 to 3:30, that second time, what would be your best estimate of the time when you came back? And what did you say?
Say about 5:30.
Were you having difficulty last year remembering the times that you were on Fairview?
No.
Were you asked last year about your travels on Fairview?
Yes.
Okay. And when you asked about, recall was time you wound up on Fairview, and you said you didn't remember. Do you remember that testimony?
I do.
And is that true testimony?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so you had some difficulties in your memory of when you were on Fairview when you testified last year. Isn't that fair to say?
No, it's not fair.
Did you say, I would say, if I had to say, it would have been 5:30 up Fairview?
That time was incorrect. It was 6:15. I couldn't go down any further due to the police presence.
So your testimony last year, you understandably made a mistake about the time, correct?
I did.
And it's true, isn't it, that you really have somewhat foggy memory about the times.
It is not.
That time of 5:30 is very different than the time you told the agents when you met them, the law enforcement officials that weren't from Canton or the state police. That was very different than when you told them 3 to 3:30.
Very different.
And it's different than the 3:30 to 4 timeline that you gave the defense private investigator the first time you spoke to them. Correct?
Correct.
And it's different than what you told the jury today, that it was 6:15.
It's different, but it's not.
When you're plowing,
I left that pause in because he never really finished it. He said it's different, but it's not. And he just never kind of put a word in there to fill out his sentence. It seemed like he had something he was going to say, but it didn't ever happen. So the other way that the Commonwealth worked hard to attack his testimony was by suggesting he really couldn't see. Now, he made a big point on direct of saying he could see the entire Albert yard, but the Commonwealth says, yeah, you had a lot to look at. There's basically a good chance you were looking at. Here's how that came out. Oh, that's all right. This time I know about where I am. So I hit the wrong button, but that is okay. I can get back to it pretty quickly.
When you're plowing, are you ever looking at the street in front of you?
Yes.
Are you looking at people's front yards?
Yes.
And so what did you see as far as the front door of the Albert house that night? Was it open or closed?
It was closed.
Were the lights on?
I can't answer that for sure. I don't remember if there were lights on.
How about the neighbors on the left? Were you looking at their front lawn?
Yes.
Did you see if their lights were on?
Again, I didn't recognize if their lights were on.
Do you look at every neighbor's front lawn up to the door as you're driving in the snow plowing?
I look to the right and to the left, and my eyes will graze to the yard. Yes, I will look there.
You were saying you have a specific memory of looking at the Albert front yard all the way to the door. Do you have a specific memory of looking at the other neighbors' yards to their door?
Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Yes, you said that you looked at the Albert house all the way to the door.
Correct.
Do you have a memory of looking at any other houses all the way to the door?
Yes.
Okay. Which house had a dumpster in front of it?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to a dumpster. Dumpster wouldn't be in the front yard.
Are you sure on your route there was no dumpsters in anybody's front yard?
I can tell you there was a dumpster this week.
No. I'm more interested in January 29, 2020.
I can't answer to that. I don't remember.
A dumpster, a 15 by 20 foot dumpster, that would be bigger than a man's body, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would be.
And so you have no really specific memory of the other homes in the neighborhood that night?
I mean, I looked.
Okay.
I saw. I didn't see a dumpster. That would have definitely stuck out.
When you plowed that night,
And the Commonwealth also pointed out that he didn't really have a reason to be looking for a body lying in the front yard of a house where he was plowing on the street. I mean, who would, right? That's just a bizarre circumstance, not one you would
did you have
expect.
any reason to look for somebody who was lying on the side of a yard?
No.
Did you have any expectation somebody would be lying helpless on the side of a yard that night?
No.
Now, in the last trial, one of the big points they made was that he had had a small accident that night. And they went into a fair amount of detail, the Commonwealth did, about sort of the things that happened after this accident, how he had to report it, and it was kind of a big, it was small. Apparently, he just kind of ran into somebody's basketball goal that was out, and he just clipped it a little bit as he went by. But you could tell from the last testimony, not this one, that he felt badly about that. The Commonwealth really did not go after that this time. They just mentioned it, and I imagine they'll mention it in closing that he had even more reason to be distracted. So what they did establish, the Commonwealth, was that his vehicle was shown in the body cam footage and the vehicle footage of the emergency vehicles that showed up at the scene. You could tell his vehicle passed that area at 6:19 in the morning, and then again at 7:19 in the morning. That could be important because the Commonwealth is going to say the reason that he remembers going by and seeing all these vehicles out here is that that's the time he was there, not 3:30 in the morning. It was 6:19. That's right before just shortly before that, he had seen Kerry Roberts' vehicle, and now he's seen the emergency vehicles.
If you could back up a little before 6:19:27. Is that weather consistent with what it looked like to you?
Yes.
Is that you there?
I don't know if that's me. Yes, that's me. That is me.
What was on the
Okay,
ground
so
on the Albert?
let's pull that out. All right. What I want to do now is I would like to get your opinion. I'm really curious what everybody is thinking. And also, since you're going to be able to vote by poll, you don't have to be mean to anybody in the chat. You can just vote. Say what you believe in this poll. So we're going to do a poll about whether or not you believe Lucky Loughran's testimony. What were you thinking as it happened? Alicia Joe, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for following me all the way since Richard Allen. I really appreciate that. She is a big fan of Lucky. We know how she is going to be voting because she's telling us right here that she feels like he did a great job on the stand. So thank you very much, Alicia Joe. I appreciate your super chat. And Megan has gifted 5 law memberships. Megan O'Leary, thank you. I really appreciate both of you. So let's go ahead and get that. We're going to go ahead and get that poll up. All right. So I'm going to ask, do you believe Lucky saw the Ford Edge at 3:30? 3:30 is going to be an ish. Okay. In fact, I'm going to do ish as opposed to Carrie Roberts' car. So we're going to do a yes or no. Do you believe Lucky saw the Ford Edge at 3:30 ish? Okay. Go. All right. So we will see what you think. I'm going to get new information from you. Hey, while we're waiting for that to come in, Marty B is a new member. Welcome, Marty. You are just in time for our next members live next week. So perfect. We are writing a true crime novel. We have been having a blast. So I have more work to do on that than to put together all our answers from last time and move us forward. So how we're doing this. It's really been an absolute blast. It's been a lot of fun. We do polls and stuff and kind of figure out where it's going to go. You guys are very creative. I will say that. Very, very impressively creative. Bethany, thank you for gifting 10 Lawyerly memberships. That's awesome. We're going to have a great group next week. And Helen is fully in the reasonable doubt camp. She is a definite not guilty. So thank you for your opinion and thank you for your super chat. All right. So we are getting the poll is up. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let's see what I can see. Oh, my goodness. Well, it's fairly one-sided. If you haven't voted yet, I won't give it away. The current view of the chat is fairly one-sided. So as we'll let that up, leave it up for a little bit. And remember here, you can just vote. No need to be mean to anybody in the chat. Just say your opinion in the poll and you'll be able to do that. Right, so let's talk about the other witness for the day. Let me get that teed up so I will be ready to go for you. So I'm not even going to pretend that I can pronounce her last name correctly, but her name was Karina Kakithus. No idea if I did that right, but she was actually at the Waterfall Bar that night when Karen Reed was there. In fact, the entire cast that we have seen at the trial or talked about at the trial was there at the Waterfall that night. We had Karen Reed. We had Jen McCabe. Karen came, met John O'Keefe there. Brian Albert, the homeowner at 34 Fairview. Brian Higgins, the ATF agent who had the dalliance, I don't know, some kind of relationship-ish thing with Karen Reed. He was there. Chris Albert, the councilman and owner of the pizza place locally, was there. And so we heard about all of the, Carrie Roberts was there. So at least, wait, I can't remember about, actually, I'm taking that back. Carrie Roberts was not there. I would like to take that back, but Karina was there. So basically, Karina's testimony was about a couple of things that happened. First, that Brian Higgins gestured to John O'Keefe. That's been something that the defense wants to put in. The defense would like to suggest that maybe this wasn't something where Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her car. It wasn't even a car accident. Instead, this was something where John O'Keefe went on into the house there at 34 Fairview and he was attacked there, maybe by Brian Higgins himself. Brian Higgins being jealous that Karen Reed had gone back with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Maybe that's what this was all about. So that's why this gesture by Brian is important to the defense. They're suggesting he's motioning to John O'Keefe, and they're suggesting it has meaning. So let's take a look. Initially, they start out talking about John O'Keefe, and they played actual video from the Waterfall Bar on the night of the 28th. They're about to move into the morning of the 29th. John O'Keefe is going to be dead within a matter of hours after this video is taken. And how many hours is unclear and depends on which side you are listening to. But what they talk about is John O'Keefe's positioning. He is up at the crane, and the men are back. The men he's been hanging out with, including Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Chris Albert, all off to his side. So let's take a look at the testimony of Karina.
Be facing in the direction of where the other group of men were?
Let me see. I think, can you, I don't think you can see my cursor. So we'll just play it.
Keep going. Stop. What direction is he facing now?
To the left.
And what is over?
So what you see, for those of you who are having trouble, it's so grainy and it's not very clear, but almost right in the middle, slightly to the right, you see a woman wearing a coat with fur around the top. That's Karina K herself. Then you see a man turn to the side directly. It's all the way in the back, and it's slightly to the left and middle. That's John O'Keefe. Karina is speaking to Karen Reed, but Karen Reed, you can't really see right now. She's being blocked by Karina.
To the left.
I believe that's where the other group of men are located, perhaps.
Okay. Keep going. And I'd like to run this to 11:58:25. Stop. At this point, his whole body is turned to the left, correct?
Correct.
And he appears to be facing where the other group of men were?
I'm sorry, repeat that?
He appears to be facing in the direction of where the other group of men were?
Correct.
Stop.
So the reason that the defense showed that first, I think, was to suggest that the motion you're going to see Brian Higgins do was directed to John O'Keefe. John O'Keefe has turned around, and so he's facing them. So now from a different camera, you're going to see Brian Higgins, and that's how you'll know that. So let's, Brian Higgins, she's going to describe, I'll do it before we even get started, is the man, there's a group of three men kind of in the middle-ish of this picture, and Brian Higgins is the one in the middle.
Okay. You've previously described the other
It's kind of a group of four men. There's one guy kind of in the back with a plaid shirt.
three men. Are you able to identify them on this video now in this still frame clip?
I believe I am able.
And who do you see?
I see Chris Albert, Brian Higgins, and Brian Albert.
And which one is which?
Chris Albert is the one that grabbed Brian Higgins' arm, and Brian Albert is with his back towards us.
Okay, now I'll ask you to use the pointer and point to Chris Albert, please.
That's Chris Albert.
On the right.
Yep.
Where's Brian Higgins?
That's Brian Higgins.
In the middle?
Yeah, in the middle. And that's Brian Albert,
Okay.
I believe.
And with regard to Brian Higgins, which direction is he facing?
He's facing the left.
He's facing to the left?
I mean, I'm sorry, he's facing to the right.
I'm a left, right. I have a problem with left and right, so I thought that was kind of humorous.
Okay. Continue to play, please. Stop. Did you see he grabbed his arm a second time?
Correct.
And Brian Higgins is facing in which direction this time?
He's facing the bar area.
Continue to play, please. Okay. You noticed some motion that Brian Higgins made?
He waved his arm.
Back it up for a second, Mr. Wilk, please. Stop.
There it is.
Did you see a motion?
He put his left arm up.
Okay. Appeared to be summoning somebody?
It's somewhat blocked by the numbers, but
Continue to play. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Continue to play. I'll bear that in mind. When you were leaving the establishment, whom
wait,
did
let's stop it there. So you saw him do this a few times, right? You will play that little last tail back. So watch for his arm, watch for the motion he's doing. There it is. He's motioning. and he's motioning, and then it's about to
When-
end. Okay, so we're going to stop it there, and we are going to do a little poll because I would like to know your opinion. And first, we're going to go back and check our other poll and see where we are. And let me say, YouTube user is a new member. We are so glad to have you. Welcome. Welcome. And Bethany has been a member for 8 months. That is awesome. We are really glad to have you as a longtime member here. And yes, it's great to be back. Iceland, however, was amazing. Absolutely amazing. The purple one is all in on the not guilty camp. And we have Charlie. Robler Bones is a new member. Glad to have you, Charlie. And Sauda Harris has been a member for 11 months, watching since Trichonis. Awesome. Oh, thank you. She likes the way I explained the legal stuff. All right, thank you. Well, I'm so glad. All right, so let me go back and check the poll. I have to, oh my goodness. We'll go ahead and end the poll. You have 10 seconds, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It was a little less than 10 probably, but we're going to go ahead and end it. And wow, kind of an overwhelming 88% of you, it changed right at the last minute. 88% are voting that you believe Lucky did see a Ford Edge at 3:30-ish in the morning. 11% say no. So that's 88% of you who believed his testimony, 11% who didn't believe his testimony, at least as to that area. So, okay, well, thank you for voting. So now I want to do a new poll because I would like to know. All right. And I'll give my opinion on this one. Was Brian Higgins' motion threatening? Okay, yes or no? We're going to start that. Was Brian Higgins' motion like that, was that a threat or some such? And that might not be quite the right question as I think about it, because one of the defense arguments, I think, is that Brian Higgins, well, we'll just go ahead and I did cover Murdoch, Kate S. Yes, that remains one of my favorite cases ever that I've covered. One of the most interesting. I loved covering that case. Lots and lots of fun. All right. So, all right. So what I was about to explain go ahead and do the poll. I know I don't think I can tell from that I probably didn't ask it quite right. So I am not exactly, I should have come up with exactly how I was going to do this in advance. Was Brian Higgins' motion threatening? Okay. So, and we'll leave it at that because that is really, to me, the question. But I'll explain what I think the defense means about that motion in just a minute. But we'll let this go another minute or two. We'll let the votes kind of increase so we can make sure we've given everybody a chance to vote about whether or not Brian Higgins' motion was threatening. So now we're going, and while that's going, we're going to talk about another issue, and that's what Jen McCabe did that night. Because remember, this witness was right there that night as they were all interacting. And she says there was something weird that Jen McCabe did also. She found it suspicious. She found it odd. Let's go ahead and that and hear what she had to say. Karina, the witness, had to say.
You were leaving the establishment. Whom did you leave with?
So again, it was myself, Jennifer McCabe, and Karen.
Did anything unusual occur when you were leaving?
So as we were leaving, Jen went over to Karen, kind of put her arm around her, and she started saying, "You're coming with me, you're coming with me." And Karen's like, "Huh? Like, what? Like, where are we going?" And
I'm going to sustain the objection.
The first part of that answer, the putting her arm around her, "You're coming with me," why did that stand out in your memory?
Just because I was there too, and it just was strange. It was just like, "You're coming with me." Like, it was just something that stood out to me.
You weren't included.
I mean, no, it's fine. I mean, it was just stood out, Yeah.
Okay, so I am curious what you think about that testimony. So here, let's go back and see where people are on was Brian Higgins' motion threatening? I'm going to go ahead and end that poll because I want to do another. So last chance to get your vote in, get it in quick. And I'm going to close it. Okay, here we go. All right, so the answer is that 71% of you saw Brian Higgins' motion as threatening when he did like this. 28% of you did not see that as threatening. And I know that that's a little off maybe from what the defense is arguing. I think they might argue that it wasn't overtly a direct threat, but that it was part of Brian Higgins' plan to convince John O'Keefe to come to the home at 34 Fairview so that he could confront him. Whether or not he meant to kill him or not, I don't know that they would even say they know, but that he did mean to confront him, and that he was trying to get him to go to 34 Fairview. Now, Brian Higgins admitted on the stand last time, he hasn't testified this trial, but he admitted that he wanted John O'Keefe to come. In fact, there's a text message saying, hey, where are you? Thought you were coming, and that sort of thing. So the defense says all of that was part of some pressure from Brian Higgins to get John O'Keefe to 34 Fairview, and there was a reason behind that. So now I want to do a poll on Jennifer McCabe, because let's ask, was Jen McCabe's behavior sus? I'm just going to do sus. How about that? Okay. So here's what Jen McCabe did. For those of you who are just tuning in. Oh, and by the way, would you hit the like button? That'll really help us with the algorithm. If you're just coming in, please be sure to hit that like button. So that, according to this witness, Karina, what Jen McCabe did was she came over to Karen and she put her arm around her and said, "You're coming with me." And she said that seemed odd to her. It stood out to her, is what she said. It stood out, that it was just, quote, stood out. So I want to know what you think about that behavior. Is putting her arm around saying, "You're coming with me," did that seem suspicious to you? So one of the things we're doing tonight, we're doing polls. You don't have to be mean to anyone in the chat. You can just put your opinion in the poll. So, all right. The witness they asked her on direct examination from the defense, were you worried about Karen driving? Because, of course, we know that the Commonwealth believes Karen was extremely drunk that night. She'd had 9 shots of vodka, and so she should not have been drinking, and it played a part in what happened afterwards. Now, in my view, well, let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and say this. So in my view, so far, her testimony had not been particularly strong, but I really felt like Brennan took an odd direction that I could not understand in his cross-examination. I'm going to play for you pretty much most of what he said and then talk about why I was so confused about this. Here was what Brennan had to say on cross-examination for the Commonwealth.
Of Karen and John, both of them walking to the car and Karen walking to the driver's side door of that car.
Correct.
That night it was a celebratory mood?
Correct.
Everybody was getting along fine?
Yes, we were. Yes.
You were speaking to the defendant for some time?
Most of the time, correct.
You saw her at points hugging Jen McCabe?
Correct.
You knew John?
I did.
He was a kind man?
Very kind.
Generous?
Very generous.
Thoughtful?
Very thoughtful.
Soft-spoken?
Yes.
That night was particularly different. He was extraordinarily proud and happy, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
And you could see him emote about his accomplishment that his daughter got into private school.
Correct.
All right, let's go ahead and pull that out. And I'll make this bigger so I can talk to y'all. So I wasn't clear why. I couldn't figure out why Brennan did that, because up until now, certainly in the first trial, the Commonwealth was busy suggesting that there was a lot of animosity that night between Karen Reed and John O'Keefe, that they've been fighting all day. And in fact, we've heard some of the text messages between them. And they've been kind of arguing all day long. There was a question about whether they were going to break up. We heard from his niece that that was what was going to happen. And so up until now, but here he's saying, everybody was having a great time and it was really peaceful, which is exactly the argument that Karen Reed's team has been making. So I'm like, why are we asking these questions? On the other hand, I guess he did get in a lot sort of personal about John O'Keefe and that he was very proud of his niece, that she'd gotten into school, that it was a happy time for him. But I still was somewhat confused about why exactly that was being asked. All right, so let's head over and see what you thought about Jennifer McCabe's behavior. Was it sus? And I'm going to end the poll in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll now. Okay, we will see where everybody is. So 83% of you think that Jen McCabe's behavior was very sus, and 16% of you say, no, there's nothing wrong with that. My personal view was I didn't really think there was anything threatening or significant about Brian Higgins. Like, okay, come on, everybody, let's go to the party. I think if you were to pull that out of context and someone were to show you a picture of a guy going, okay, everybody, come on, I don't think any of us would say, wow, he looks really threatening. I think he's about to kill somebody. I think the impression we have of what happened is largely dependent on what the opinions we formed about the case up until now, whether they be pro-Commonwealth or pro-Karen Read. So I think that shapes how we view that. I kind of see the same thing for Jennifer McCabe. Just the mere act of putting your arm around someone and saying, hey, you're coming with me, doesn't to me seem threatening. It doesn't seem suspicious. I think it's in context. It's within the confines of a case where we know a lot more facts about it, that I think we draw our opinions about that act. Whether you think that there was nothing or out of the ordinary with it, it was a completely normal act, pro-Commonwealth, or whether you think, yeah, that was really odd and suspicious, and so forth. So, all right. Sauda, I think I already said thank you to you, but I'm so glad you've been a member for 11 months. And Alicia Joe is wondering, was it an accident, slip and fall with no conspiracy and no murder? That was something that got dropped into the middle of the case, the Commonwealth's case in chief, when one of their own experts actually said, hey, yeah, what we see right here, the fall, the hit on the back of the head, we see that all the time with drunk people. That just happens. Drunk people fall down, they hit their heads, and this is how they die, which was a disastrous moment for Commonwealth, because obviously if it's just an accident and John O'Keefe just fell down and hit his own head, then that's not anything that involved Karen Read. Then she would be not guilty. Now, the Commonwealth says there's much more than that. You've got taillight pieces scattered around. You've got taillight pieces embedded in John O'Keefe's sweater and so forth. So we won't cover the entire case, but I'm just saying there's an argument both ways. All right. So let's take a few questions. And if you, so Alicia Joe, thank you very much. And Jeremy, thank you for your super chat. I appreciate that. Let's take a few questions now. If you would put question marks at the beginning, that'll help me spot it in the chat as it moves by, so I have a better shot of being able to answer your question. We'll just take a few right now, but as I said, please do put that question mark at the beginning. And I'm really curious what y'all are thinking about the case. I appreciate your answers on the poll that we've been doing. Mary wants to know, what did you think of Alessi's motion to dismiss yesterday? I thought it was very clear that the judge got that call correct. I realized that Alessi seemed very worked up about it. There was the banging of the podium. There was the shouting. He was very into it. But I think it was pretty clear that that was appropriate for a couple of different bases. One was that an attorney is always allowed to ask a question that the attorney believes he has a good faith basis in evidence, of admissible evidence too. And in this particular case, although the evidence is not in yet, it's not actually in the trial, I think that Brennan has cover. He does have a reasonable good faith basis to believe he can put in evidence that would support that. Additionally, it's always okay to examine an expert on the bases of their opinions, even if that has not already been put into evidence. So in my opinion, the judge did make the correct call on the motion to dismiss yesterday by Alessi. Brad Tipton, if the jury thinks Proctor may have planted additional evidence, should they legally or morally vote not guilty? So interesting question, Brad. And in my opinion, no. In my opinion, they should vote on what they believe the correct thing is. And that would be the correct thing as I understand it. Now, if additional evidence was added and it causes reasonable doubt, then I think they absolutely should vote not guilty. But if they believe some evidence was planted, but they do not have that reasonable doubt, then I think they ought to vote to convict her. That would be my read of that. Candace is asking me, can you explain why the judge hasn't called Karen Read out on her theatrics and histrionic reactions in court? Why would her attorneys not caution her about this? Candace, I have not seen a lot of that. The TV cameras are not showing a lot of Karen Read, but that was something that was talked about even by the first jury, that they had noticed that they had particularly noticed the behavior and the movements and so forth. That's always a super risky thing. We've heard that in trial after trial. The jury is watching the defendant all the time. The defendant is on display the entire time of the trial. And it's critical that they not play into any biases that the jury might have, or that they don't not look in a way that might cause a jury to conclude that they're guilty or trying to hide something, anything like that, or even just find them offensive. So I do think I can't say that I've seen a lot of those reactions, and it could just be, I was mostly listening or taking notes, and I wasn't, literally watching exactly at the time that you're talking about. I just haven't seen it. So definitely, especially after the last trial, in the comments, her attorney should caution her about that. That'd be very appropriate for them to do. All right, Floa is saying, do you think Higgins seen John O'Keefe kiss Kate on the forehead? Now, you need to know, Floa, I've told you before, I'm really bad with acronyms and abbreviations, but these I can get. Karen Read and John O'Keefe. After he ignored him all night and John O'Keefe kissed Karen Read on the forehead. One of the things Karina talked about was this gesture that night when she saw John O'Keefe kiss Karen Read on the forehead. And she said it was just the sweetest thing. It was, she was really touched by it. It just seemed so gentle, like a little private moment between them. And one of the things that Yannetti showed was that he showed the actual camera where you saw that moment and you saw him kiss Karen Read on the forehead, and Brian Higgins is looking straight at them, just directly at them. So and the hint from Yannetti was, well, maybe that would really bother him because he would like to have Karen Read, and instead he's seeing that she's with this other guy. And that's obviously the defense wants to put in that Brian Higgins was this third-party culprit, that Brian Higgins may be the one who was at fault for all of this. So my personal view is it did not seem like Higgins was deeply involved in wanting to be with Karen Read. Like somewhat, he would have liked it, but to me, I didn't read it as he was all in, and if he didn't have Karen Read, that was just really bad. So that was just my personal read, but that was the argument. Thank you for bringing that up so I can make sure everybody knows about that argument. Peaches wants to know if the civil case will move forward if Karen Read is in prison. It certainly can. There's nothing that causes it to be dismissed just because she's in prison. On the other hand, the point of a civil case is to collect money. And so she would not have a lot if she's in prison for life. One of the reasons sometimes civil cases move forward, even if the person is in jail, even if they're never going to make another penny other than maybe from making the license plates or something, if they're going to make nothing and they are never going to be able to repay, sometimes the civil case will go through anyway. And the reason is that they want to make sure that if the person, the prisoner, makes money from, say, a book or a movie or some kind of telling their story to somebody, that all of that money comes to the victim. There are statutes that provide for that in some states, and certainly there are, but people sometimes follow through with the civil suit just to make sure that they have that judgment there in case the person ever comes into money for a reason like that. So all that to say, the lawyerly, I don't know. All right, Deb saying, is it legal for the Commonwealth to lie to a witness? It is not as illegal as I think it should be for the Commonwealth to lie to lots of people, including and this isn't just the Commonwealth, this is the government, including defendants. I find that inappropriate, but that is a common thing that it's okay in some circumstances if they're trying to get to the bottom of things. Now, to a witness, I'm not really sure exactly what you mean. I guess it might depend on the context. I can't really answer that, I guess, as phrased. How's that for another lawyerly answer, huh? Me Boo, have you watched the Microdots video on the activity at the waterfall? No, that sounds interesting. I have not. Okay, let's see. Jen, do you think Karen Reed hit John with her vehicle? I'm holding off on that until we reach the end of the trial. Besides, I don't think it would even be helpful because I think that people are very in their opinions. This is a little bit different. And to some degree, there's some reason for that, which is there's already been a full trial. So it's not as if people come into this completely fresh, having no idea what the arguments are. This is a little bit different. Blissful Essence, do you think Hank will use this Karina against Karen, contrast to her voicemails not long after to John to say she's erratic and volatile? Blissful Essence says. So I cannot understand why Hank Brennan kind of went down the, everything was really peaceful road in his cross-examination of Karina. Those text messages we saw suggested it was not peaceful. She was saying, I hate you within just a matter of hours. So, but of course, people can get into an argument, especially if they've been having an argument all day. You might take a little break while you're out in public, you're with other people, but then when in private, it may rear its ugly head again. So I'm sure all of us have experienced that. Ugly Girl wants to know, what do you think of the 1 hour on closings? I wasn't clear that that was an absolute limit. Interesting that it is. I personally am usually in favor of the judge giving everybody as much time as they want, but an hour is really pretty reasonable. I don't think that any appellate court is going to say that wasn't enough time. That's, to me, it's the bare minimum, but I think that it's probably pretty reasonable. I don't like limits. Maybe that's just because I don't like having the limits put on me as opposed to any other reason. Oh, thank you for your question. Who do you think had the better questioning of Lucky for the Commonwealth, Brennan or Lally? I think Brennan. I do think Brennan. Although Lally did get really lucky with that confusion on the time last time. Get lucky. But he did have that come out. And this time it came out much more clearly. So, and more clearly in favor of Karen Reed, which put Brennan in the position of having to ask questions like, oh, well, didn't you say this before? It's way more complicated than just having somebody say something on the stand and you can just directly ask the questions. Kate, do you think what, oh no, BA and BH, Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, okay, had to hide on their cells, had nothing to do with this. Kate S. You know, and here's another question, Kate S. I don't think, does the jury even know about those phone calls? Does the jury know about those phone calls? Because neither Brian Albert nor Brian Higgins has testified. Maybe there was a witness who came in and said, yes, they made calls to each other. There may well have been that. But I don't know how much they really know about that. But I think the Commonwealth is going to say, that was absolutely irrelevant. It probably was a butt dial. But remember, this jury has heard nothing about that. At no point have they heard about accidental dialing in the middle of the night while in bed. None of that has happened. Betsy wants to know, have you ever considered becoming a judge? I did consider that. I did. Bonbon RPH, do you think Karina is more reliable to the jury because she was not drinking that night? Well, that would certainly make sense, right? It would certainly make sense that it would be a little bit clearer. Her memory of it might be clearer than some of the other people's, but and they did make a point of the fact that she had not been drinking and she had not had anything to drink at the waterfall. I don't remember if she said before the waterfall, but definitely at the waterfall, she said she had had nothing to drink at all. So she was not intoxicated, was at least the suggestion from. So that maybe slightly, I don't know how much of a difference that will make. All right, so we'll do another question or two. Let's see. I'm looking for question marks at the beginning. That's my only shot. But I did catch Angie's. Why does Karen have to go up to the sidebar? So the point of going up to the sidebar is for everyone to be able to talk outside the hearing of the jury. Karen Reed asked for maybe not having to go up to the sidebar, that it was maybe a little uncomfortable given, the proximity of the jury. It seemed a little uncomfortable. But I believe the theory was that she would need to hear and understand exactly what was being said. And so she goes up. Courts do that really differently. I mean, we have seen in Lori Vallow Daybell, they've got headphones and they put on their headphones and talk to each other while noise plays in the courtroom. So no one else can hear, and they're just talking over their headphones to each other. The prosecutor, Lori Vallow Daybell, and the judge all have their own set of headphones because Lori's representing herself. So courts do that just wildly differently. The process of having the defendant go up is unusual to me, but some courts do that. So that depends on the court. Well, be sure to hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. We are ever so close to 200,000. If you subscribe now, we're going to assume you are the one who put us over the top, even if we're not quite. We're just going to assume it's you. So please do that. And I will see you all tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern.